Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we have that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. The internet didn't get invented on its own. Government research created the internet, so then all the companies could make money off the internet.
That was President Obama telling America's small businesses and entrepreneurs, you didn't get here on your own, but rather the helping hand of government made your path to success possible. This is all in an effort to justify his call for increasing taxes on the so-called rich in this country. That moment came from a speech in Virginia last Friday, and it's generated a growing debate in the days since. Joining me now for a fair and balanced debate, Melissa Francis, host of, here we go, Melissa, Money with Melissa Francis on the Fox Business Network.
I love it.
Also Charles Payne, who's a business owner himself, as well as a Fox Business Network contributor. And Hank Shaikoff. I always mess that up, Hank. Shaikoff.
Me too.
Democratic strategist for the Clinton-Gore presidential campaign. Welcome all.
Thanks.
All right, so let me tell you what Rush Limbaugh just said about this. We don't have the soundbite, but this is what he says. I think it can now be said without equivocation that this man hates this country. He is trying to dismantle, brick by brick, the American dream. Now, Rush is going to say what Rush is going to say, but this is where the right is going to go with this comment. And you had Lou Dobbs on earlier saying this is going to be a seminal moment in this campaign where Barack Obama is looking at small business owners, the backbone of the economy, and saying, you didn't do it by yourself, and you owe. There's some sort of, obligation to pay more taxes because your employees rode on bridges and roads and so on. You heard the president espouse it earlier, Melissa.
I don't think anybody who's had any success in their life says to themselves, I did this all by myself. But I do think that by saying this, he's alienating millions of small business people across the country. I also think the government has to take credit for revenue that comes from businesses, because the government doesn't do anything on its own. It doesn't create any economic rent. It doesn't generate any revenue. I mean, all it does is take tax money from me. That's how they generate revenue. Mm-hmm. But I think that this is a big moment, and he's alienated a lot of people.
Well, there's a question about how small business owners like yourself, Charles, feel when they hear that. There's sort of a presumption built in that you are not paying your fair share, right, and you are not giving back to the American public that helped you get where you are.
Well, one of the ironies, of course, is when the president talks about someone building those roads and bridges, it's the businesses
who built them.
Right. I mean, that's where the tax money came from. The people who work, the people who are successful, that's how they got built in the first place. It's not the people that are not working. It's really offensive. First of all, I mean, despicable, offensive, ignorant. The statement is, I've heard Elizabeth Warren say it.
He's really upset.
No, I am upset because I know how hard I've been working. Working 10 years without a vacation, around the clock. I've sacrificed my relationships. I've sacrificed relationships with spouses, kids, everything. I speak for all small business people. It's crap. It's the ultimate insult that the president has to dig this low, and it's ridiculous. It's so infuriating because it also gives credence to people who don't work hard. In other words, see, here's the thing. If you can't take credit for your success because of society, then you can't be credited for your failure because of society. Not only is he hurting people who are trying hard, but he's giving a free pass to people that aren't.
Hank, you're a Democrat. Why are you shaking your head yes when you heard everything he just said?
Look, Rush is extreme. Dobbs is correct. This is the defining moment, because what's being told to people, particularly in the mid section of this country, is that their efforts aren't significant enough. And the problem here is that the Democrats in the House and Senate ought to be telling the President of the United States to stop saying these things, because he's cutting them out of the possibility of picking up seats every time he attacks localized small businesses.
You think this is a big moment in his campaign?
Yeah, I think this is an extraordinary moment. And what he's done is moved himself further to the left than is necessary. The winning strategy is always down the center, Southern Protestants, Northern Catholics. It's the map that Richard Nixon put together in 1968. It's the map that Bill Clinton used. It's the map that everybody else has used. He's putting another rift in that map. Not so good. And he's pitting poor against rich in a way that is not usable or helpful.
He came out last week when he called for raising taxes on those making over $250,000 a year, Melissa, and talked about how it's not class warfare and it's not anything against small businesses. I've lowered taxes on small businesses 18 times, he says, but we're at a point now in the economy where we've got to do it. This whole thing was an effort to justify that call for increased taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, does he convince any small business owners maybe maybe left-wing, the left-leaning small business owners that they need to pay more.
I don't think you convince anyone with anything like this. You don't convince anyone who's owns a business. Maybe you fire up your base. Maybe you fire up people in the extreme left. Because if you really break down what he said, it has a very socialist theme to it. And that's what I think anyone who knows anything about economics.
You have to pay it forward. You have to pay it forward.
Well, I mean, small business owners do. I mean, they hire people. Every dollar that you send to Washington in tax is a dollar that you're not spending giving somebody in your business an hour of overtime, buying another computer, buying more software. It's not like that money would have gone nowhere or would just be sitting on the sidelines. It would be deployed somewhere else in the economy. And every small business owner knows that that's a choice, that they're not spending it somewhere else.
He's talked about this repeatedly, Charles, where he talked about how you do need to be your brother's keeper and you're not on your own. And that's sort of the America that he sees. And then you hear a response by folks saying, that's fine, but I will choose the ones that I look after. America is the most generous country on earth.
The president says there are a lot of rich people that agree with him and that they want to give back. Listen, no rich person, even Warren Buffett's not talking about giving his fortune to the U.S. government. He's going to give all his money to Bill Gates. No rich person is saying, I want to give the government more. Now, they do a lot. This is the dismiss. Whatever you do.
He suggests it is. When President Obama spoke, he actually suggests that there are some. He said, he talked about how there are a lot of wealthy, successful Americans who agree with me because they want to give something back.
But they don't want to give it to the government. They do want to give something back. I give something back. I'm sure everybody in this room gives things back. But we don't want to give the money to the government to spend on things that are ridiculous. We know that there are better ways to create opportunity. But I'm telling you who the real victims here are. Those small kids out there, young adults out there who might have something of a bug that I want to be extraordinary. For what? Why? If they're going to snatch it from you and then browbeat you, why go for it?
The real victims here are small business owners, mom and pop stores and others who are going to be put out of business ultimately because they can't afford to pay their taxes, provide the health care insurance, and provide the benefits required.
And no one's going to want to follow them
and
up.
That is a very, very serious thing. That's a different issue, and that is not a Republican nor a Democratic issue, but an issue for the country. If we're going to see malls and we're going to see stores that are the chain stores that are going to be in business, we're going to see people earning minimum wage jobs with lower benefits because that's how that system
But wait, because you helped get President Clinton
Well, I'm fortunate. I've worked on 600, 700 campaigns.
Okay, this president has continuously said, all I want to do with these tax hikes that I'm proposing is bring us back to the Clinton era. And business was booming and the economy was booming.
Sure.
So don't act like this is some huge bit. Now, the messaging on the small business is a different thing. But he says this is not that.
The Clinton tax increase was required to ensure that and if you look at the outcome of the Clinton years, this was not a debtor nation. This was a creditor nation. The economy had not been better. We had avoided extraordinary military adventure. He's got a problem. It's called we have a deficit that is outrageous, and we have a debt problem that is not insignificant.
And an economy that's not growing.
And
is there anything to, and I'm not going to ask you to sign on to Russia's comments, but is there anything to this notion by some on the right that President Obama just sees the economy in a different way?
He does, absolutely. I mean, it's the difference between believing in a free market economy and believing the Keynes model. And I think that, even if Keynes were here today, he would say that you can only spend to grow the economy when you're not deeply in debt. I mean, that revenue that you're going to spend comes from somewhere. It comes from taxpayers. At this point, if you levy higher taxes, it contracts the economy. I mean, this is the ongoing debate. I think there's plenty of data around to show that Keynes doesn't work. The other side would argue the opposite. But it does really show the fundamental difference between someone who wants enterprise to prosper, wants businesses to grow, the economy to grow, more jobs, versus somebody who thinks that the government does the best for the economy as a whole. The government controlling it is the best way to go. They're just totally different philosophies.
Got to run quickly. What were you going to say?
It's a way to punish people who want to put their lives on hold, to put the 16, 17, 18, 20 hours in a day, 7 days a week that's required to build something. That's what is absolutely.
You make an interesting point. You talk about your own personal history and your own personal sacrifices.
I agree 1,000% with that. And the president is saying, I don't have any faith in the American people. Only the government can do it. And I think that's scary.
My grandfather came here in a boat with nothing, and he built something 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know what? People ought to have that opportunity.
Wow. Thank you. It's not often we get that agreement across the ideological lines. Thank you all so much. We appreciate it.